JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Tuesday, January 27th, 9:15 a.m. Really quick rant, talk about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P in the green. Looks like we're going to open about 0.2% to the upside. Nasdaq's up about 0.6%. All in the face of more headwinds, right? POTUS coming out with a tweet saying he's going to throw a 25% tariff on South Korea. If that tweet came out back in April or May, excuse me, it's not a tweet, it's a post, right? Uh, if that came out in May, probably have a 0.5% to 1% pullback on the futures, and now it's like a hiccup. You wouldn't even know there was some kind of comments there. So it's kind of like that's getting shaken off, which is kind of like a good thing. But you have to think at some point it's going to be, just like we had with the Greenland reverse tweet last week in regards to removing the tariffs on the eight European countries. It's going to be something that's going to happen, right? So you always got to be aware and open to the possibility that there's going to be some market moving tweet that's kind of like, unfortunately, the environment we're in. But we'll see what happens here today. I put on the watch list. I would love to see consolidation today, and then up to 2 o'clock tomorrow ahead of the Fed meeting. I don't think there's going to be any surprise with the Fed. You have to think they're going to put the market to price in the first rate cut happening in June. Who knows how that's going to play? Obviously, with the pressure, if there's no rate cut at the meeting tomorrow, there's going to be more tweets, right? And threats of termination from Fed Chair Powell. This has been going on, so I don't think the concern to me would be if Fed Chair Powell kind of like falls off the rails, right? If he kind of goes on some kind of attack with Trump, and then there's a big back and forth. Don't want to see that. So that's my worry. But outside of that, then it's the earnings. So after the close tomorrow, Microsoft, Meta, Tesla. And also, I think ASML's tomorrow morning, Lam Research. So a lot of names in the AI space, the chip space, the semi space, and to me, the software space, right? Microsoft. If you put up the poster child for software, the big rally that happened in the 2000s before, I mean, even in the 1990s, right? I mean, Microsoft obviously is the star and they continue to be. So their earnings, I think, is almost more important because all these names have taken on the chin to start the year. Is it going to be a bounce? Is it the start of a bigger pull? Is it the end of the software sell-off and things get back to normal? Certainly going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But to me, would like to see decent earnings, maybe just at least alleviate some concerns. Things aren't as bad in the software space and maybe markets find some footing. And I'm trying to think of the other events. But anyway, so you take a look at the SPY, 697 and change. That's the upper Bollinger Band. So if we do get more buyers here after the open, watch that as possible resistance. And now 693. We're back above that, gapping above it here this morning. It's pretty much markets opened. And then I put this kind of like the analogy on the watch list. It's like the markets at the open was a plane and we were getting through the clouds. Because once you get through the clouds, that's where all the turbulence is. That's where the risk of some kind of, disaster, what have you. Once you get through the clouds, then you break into the atmosphere, and then it's clear sailing. It's kind of like how the markets were this morning, yesterday morning. Once we got through 692, 693, it was clear sailing, and the markets just chopped around in that range for the rest of the day. So, love to see consolidation here today. 693 being support, even if we chop around there. And then if things get a little iffy, if there's some kind of catalyst, what have you, 686, just want to see that hold. And I'm still in kind of on the mindset that I'm going to add puts. No, excuse, in lieu of adding puts on downside for hedges, I'm going to hold, try my best to hold and play calls and nibble calls for upside. That's kind of the playbook for now. Obviously, things change, so that's that. Also, take a look at a 10-year, slow and steady to the downside. Would love to see that accelerate a little bit, but that's that. And then just I always look at Market Watch for the comedic relief for the day. And this morning's was Wall Street veteran who called the dot-com bubble. He sees a bigger bubble in the Magnificent Seven. I mean, I don't know how you see that, where all those Mag 7 number companies, billions of dollars in profits on a quarterly basis with hundreds of billions of dollars in cash. It just, to even put a comparison like that almost like negates the credibility of the piece to say that any of those Mag 7 names are a bubble, right? They could be overvalued. They could be stretched. They could be traded higher multiples than you think they deserve. But to even just put a comparison that they're a bubble is like, to me, it just erases any credibility that you might have. All right. Unless if you call it the dot-com bubble, then I guess you have a lot of credibility. All right. Overall markets, individual name. Also of note, small caps yesterday underperformed, and they've been the outperforming sector. So not surprising considering its rally. I mean, up 9% to start the year. So a little pullback in the face of yesterday's strength in the other names. Hopefully just kind of like a 1 or 2 day thing, and then we get back to resuming. All right, so that's overall markets. Just quick on individual names. Zoom, right? Zoom I haven't talked about too much. I think I traded calls back in the summer, but it's one of those great stories because it's, obviously if I get calls on the name, it's a great story. I'm joking aside. Tons of cash, right? $8 billion in cash, $28 billion company. So 30% of its valuation is cash, and it's in a niche, right? I mean, here's taking the meetings into the 21st century. So that's what they're doing. And back in COVID, obviously the stock went bonkers. But then it's like, oh, okay, what happens from COVID, right? And people going back to the office. I mean, well, they're not going back to the office at the same pace that they were pre-COVID. So there's still the business case and use case for Zoom, but then it's like, okay, it's not like they invented the wheel. So they don't have, everybody can do meetings. You can do your face, there's all different platforms that you can do meetings from. So it's not like they have a technology that is not replaceable, although it is, Zoom is intertwined with people's work, all the different functions of work. It's just intertwined. So, not saying that's a moat around their business, but you make the case that, okay, they don't deserve high multiples or whatever it is. But so now post COVID, the stock is taken on the chin, but it's still a monster. Still delivers nearly $2 billion in free cash flow on a yearly basis. It has a massive stock buyback program. I think it's up points $1.3 billion in authorizations right now. And then it's kind of like they've been struggling. They're still growing, but it's the growth has been slowing. And then this most recent quarter, they just raised guidance. And it looks like it's almost like a turnaround. They've been using some different avenues of trying to get back to a growth story. With that being said, back in 2023, they announced a partnership with Anthropic, and then on the bottom of the press release, it says we have an investment in Anthropic, but there are no details, right? So you go into their filings, and back in 2023, you look at 10Q, there's a $51 million investment in strategic investment, right? And it looks like that was the only strategic investment that they talked about in 2023. You have to assume, connect the dots. It's Anthropic. So you fast forward the valuations on Anthropic, and that 51 million back in 2023 is now between $2, $3, $4 billion. Not really talked about much. And if you look at their filings, I haven't had a chance, unfortunately, time, right? Finite resources, time. I haven't had a chance to go through all the filings, but it does look like they account from on their 10Q. I think it's up to $1 billion in valuation on strategic investments. But it's like a thing nobody talked about. And you try and find, I haven't seen anybody talk about this until an analyst yesterday talked about it being like a untapped valuation catalyst, right? So stock went bonkers yesterday, finally over highs it hasn't seen since 2022. Now you can make the case this starts to get some FOMO. So I was on the fence against calls. I hate chasing, but I started looking. I'm like, this might continue to go. Instead of getting the weekly strikes, I wanted to get some more time. Went and got the February strikes. I might add more calls here. We'll see if it holds up. I mean, again, it can be a name that people still think it's going to flounder for the next 6 to 12 months. I don't think that's going to be the case. And not only that, the possibility that this valuation from Anthropic is not anything anywhere factored into Zoom. But I say it in the same sentence because it is in their filings, right? So you can see the $1 billion valuation, at least of that strategic investment. But I don't think folks know about it, right? So we'll see what happens here today. If it holds the gains, obviously I'm going to try and lock some in to cover costs on my February strikes. And then if it holds the gains and maybe starts to look like it's going to head over $100, might look to get some more strikes. If not, I'll be patient and then I'll look for other opportunities because I think it might be the start of a blue sky breakout for Zoom. All right, so that's Zoom. Take a look at its longer dated chart here, and I think this is a weekly. Levels yesterday not seen since mid 2022. So all right, so that's Zoom. Don't want to go too much on a rant there. Arista Networks got those calls at the open yesterday. The CoreWeave, the NVIDIA $2 billion investment, not the first investment for NVIDIA, or at least the partnership thing that Jensen's been talking about for a while. Loves that company. But pretty much it just sparked a rally in some of the names in the AI data center space. And Arista is one of those front and center, right? Because, I talked about it yesterday. I mean, the big red flag with Arista is that their big customers are Microsoft and Meta. So there was a report, I don't know if it was last month or the month before, that Meta might be going with different switches. I don't know if there was any truth to that, but the stock sold off. And I don't know if that's some of the reason why it's not at its November 165 levels. But I do think there's an opportunity. You saw rallying yesterday, gave back some of the gains, but I took some of the calls off within 10 minutes for close to 100%. And then I didn't want to see it come completely down back to 140. So I locked some more in for close to 200%. And now I just have a couple freebies left. So I'm just going to hold them. But the other possibility is I close those out and just roll some of the freebie profits into some later dated strikes to play for a move to 160. That's probably the scenario that is going to come. I mean, the other scenario is I add more strikes and continue to hold the weeklies. Just finite. Strike expires Friday, so I don't have as much time. But I think yesterday might be the kickstart it needs. And 140, I think it's 146 was the highs from last week when it got an upgrade. So if it gets over that, I think it's off the race. All right, so Arista, ServiceNow reports earnings after the close tomorrow. I was looking to get 155 or 154 strikes yesterday. It's trading here 136, but the plan would be ride some premium build into earnings, be able to close some out before the close Wednesday to cover costs, ride freebies into earnings. Scenarios, obviously, well, I mean, there's three scenarios. Well, one, I mean, the stock's destroyed. Take a look at its gap from its last earnings from December. Was it December earnings? What was that catalyst? There was something. Was there a buyout? I forget why it sold off. It was a $175 stock back in December. It came down to 125 just 4 sessions ago. So it's either the start of a bounce back to a gap fill. I'm not saying it's 175 quick, but it could be the start of it, or it's just a short-term bounce before the next leg to the downside. I don't think that's going to be the scenario that plays out, but I also want to see if there's an opportunity to play for upside, and it is the start of a bounce. It might be massive. So I talked about, I don't know why I don't have my pincher chart here, but it's a pincher. So that also plays into the possibility of a huge outsized bounce. So don't be surprised I do some 155 or 154 strikes. I think they were 50 cents. Hopefully get a chance to lock them out, cover costs, ride the rest, and then it's a risk-free trade. That's that. I'm trying Reddit. I don't see any news or catalysts. It looks like the Bears are just taking control after, not. But it's like the Bulls went in hibernation. It traded all the way down to 191 in the pre-market. I don't know if there's any news. I Because of that, I'll probably just sit on my hands instead of trying to do a bounce. And that's it, folks. Have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.